Right. I think that we are live.
Yes, we are.
All right, everybody. This is Chloe with the Socialist Hype House, and today I'm debating the war slogan on gun control and gun law legislations and stuff like that. All right, so I'll start with a kind of an opening-ish statement. I believe that guns do more good than bad for this country, and as a far leftist, I believe when Karl Marx said that guns should be taken away, and if so, we should be going at that with force. And yeah,
And me being a more centrist, liberal Democrat, I believe that we should have stronger gun restrictions, and I'm not necessarily opposed to banning guns.
not opposed to banning guns. Okay then. So what gun laws do you like or think we should be implemented more often?
I think universal background checks are generally a good thing, although the system itself is generally flawed. Which who it was, but like it was just some like the FBI didn't get information because someone forgot to turn something in, and then that person was able to go get a gun, and then they happened to go shoot people, and which shouldn't happen because the system needs to be better than that. So, but I think if they could get the system going, I think that would be an amazing help to stop the people that shouldn't be getting guns from getting guns.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm definitely against restrictions because in America, it seems that restrictions don't really work necessarily. A lot of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. People are defenseless, and there have been times where someone has gone in to start a mass shooting, and civilians stops it from happening. Because there's a statistic where there's a mass shooting, and people wait for the police. The average death of a person is like for people is 14.8. When a civilian comes and stops the mass shooting, the deaths are 1.8. So civilians with guns are definitely more useful, and they're very helpful.
See, but my thing with that is if you have, like, obviously, if someone does have a gun and they're going to cause harm, it is better to have someone with a gun. But what if that person doesn't have the gun in the first place? They don't pose a threat in the first place. Like, that's
But
the one thing I hear a lot is Republicans, they say, guns save millions of lives. Well, why were those lives in danger in the first place is what we really have to look at. Most often it was by another gun, which is why.
It's true, but if someone wants to cause harm to someone else, they're not gonna just, I can't get a gun. It's not hurt people today. They will find a way to either get a gun illegally, or they will use another measure of hurting people. So one of the biggest massacres in this country's history, it was bombs, not guns.
Yeah, but if we look at a country like Australia, where they did ban guns, now guns on the black market are upwards of $34,000, which your everyday criminals are not going to want to spend that money to just go out unless you have a deep hate or hitman style thing. You're not going to want to go out. Most people that break into your home just want your TV and your money. They don't really want to kill you.
That's true, but also in Australia, before the gun ban, homicides were still falling down. The gun ban didn't really have much of an effect in Australia if the gun counts were already going down before the gun ban.
They were, I will say that, but it continued to fall afterwards. And it's not like whenever they did ban guns, it continued to fall. So it's not like people found other ways of doing it. It just it generally stopped. Mainly because I will say Australia is a very different social climate than America is one of the big things. They're not, don't take my guns away, sort of.
Yeah.
They're,
yeah. Okay, what about countries like Switzerland, where the gun laws are very low and the deaths there are near zero? The murder rate there is near zero.
Again, I mean, it's hard to sometimes it's really hard to compare other countries. I will say,
Hmm.
you know, Switzerland is they've always kind of been peaceful for a while. I will say, like,
Hmm. That's
it's
true. How would you like propose, banning guns or, restricting guns more in this country?
first off, universal background checks would be the first
Hmm.
wave, voluntary buybacks after that, and then I would
Okay.
say either I would not want to take them by force. That would just start a civil war. That's honestly very stupid. That
Yeah.
you would never do that. That's I
I mean,
mean
yeah.
something in the way. Eventually, guns really become ineffective. And if we keep up with the technology that we're going with, if we just grandfather in the people that have their guns already, like eventually, like we're gonna have such advancements that handguns aren't really gonna be that big of a deal anymore. You know what I mean? Like right now, like if we like ban guns, like the manufacturer give people citizens like newer guns, like back in the 1860s, everyone still have like muskets, and it wouldn't
Hmm.
be that big of a deal because it's one shot, and then ramrod, you're taking a while to refill it.
Hmm.
But I will
True.
say, um, the whole gun laws mean more deaths. It's kind of true, but it's kind of not. If you look at the rankings of states with the most lenient gun laws, um, and if you compare that list with the list of gun deaths by state,
Hmm.
uh, 14 of those, where is it? 8 out of 15 of those are on the same list. So there really is no correlation between strictness of gun laws and like it's not like there really is no because people these states like Utah, Arizona, Alaska, Idaho, they
Hmm.
have some of the most lenient gun laws, but then Alaska also has the most gun deaths rate.
Most gun
Like
deaths.
it's
Is Alaska had the most gun death rates?
yes,
And was there gun
Alaska
control? They have gun like hard, strict gun
they
control or
have
lenient gun
the
control?
third most lenient gun control laws in Alaska,
Okay.
and they
Okay.
have the highest rate.
Okay, I gotcha.
And then another thing that I don't like is in in my opinion, guns make people more violent and they give you the opportunity to become violent. Like my main thing is because I'm generally a pacifist, I don't
Hmm.
like violence and I really don't want people to have the opportunity to harm a lot of
Okay.
people very quickly. And the FBI or the Bureau of Justice, the study of criminals who were in federal and state prisons, and whenever the criminals attained it, 1 in 5 had an intent to use the gun that they got in the offense when they first obtained it. Meaning 4 of the other people in the 5 didn't have any plans to use that gun in a crime whenever they first got it. As in, guns are
Okay.
giving people the opportunity to go out and commit more crimes.
Of course, it's a good opportunity to, but at the same time, guns save more lives a year than they take. And if the people didn't have guns, they'd be dead right now to defend
I mean,
themselves.
again, if they never had guns in the first place, if you look at like
But like,
the church in Texas, I think, where the guy walked in with a gun and the guy was
it
standing in the back, that situation wouldn't have really happened if he didn't have a gun. It,
goes back to the part where they will find ways to harm people with it or without a gun. You know, they'll use I don't know knives. They could use homemade bombs. They can even make a gun. People can make guns nowadays. Just gotta buy some parts. Have a 3D printer, make that into real fire ammunition with it. Because even in the UK, where guns are like basically banned, people have made guns and killed people. It's happened a lot, but it still happens. How do you
yeah, but
prevent that?
it doesn't
How do
happen a lot though. Is the thing. Like in America, there's an average of 54.3 school shootings a year, and that's just schools.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen in the UK at all, or in Australia. And on top of that, uh, all of the total war deaths in America from 1775 to now is 1.2 million. All the gun deaths from 1968 to now are at 1.5 million,
Yeah.
which is
Leading,
absolutely ridiculous.
leading back to the UK, I mean, of course they're gonna have less shootings because they have a way lower population than we do, and they have like way less. They never had miniguns in the first place. They never had miniguns in the first place, so it's easier to restrict them. But America, their population is 66 million, and they have about 600,000 guns in the country. America has 323 million people and almost 400 million guns. So
Which
there's
is
no way.
ridiculous. I don't know
no way
why
you can
people
restrict-
need that many guns.
You don't need it, but I say it's a right to own a gun if you want to own a gun. Second Amendment, right?
Yeah, the Second Amendment isn't that strong though.
What was that?
The Second Amendment doesn't necessarily protect your rights. If you look at the text of the Second Amendment, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If you look at the definition, first of all, it says well-regulated. So that does not mean you and your buddies with your guns are a militia. So first off, right out of the bat, you really don't have really a right there. And a militia definition is a body of citizens enrolled for military service and called out periodically for drills, but only serving full-time in emergencies, which is the National Guard, which we have. And it's regular people that serve part-time in the military for drilling.
Well, that's a new definition. Back then, militia meant any adult who had a gun. That's what it meant back then.
Well, times changed. The Constitution is a fluid document. If we're going to stick with the context of the times, then people should only be allowed to have a musket.
Well, if you're going by times back then, it doesn't matter. Well, it's something about my house.
If everyone had a musket. A musket's a one shot, and then it takes 60 seconds to reload.
Can't really use that because, with the First Amendment, they didn't have TV, news, social media back then. Does free speech not apply to that now too? The times are different back then.
It's a fluid document, so it moves with the times. Meaning the definitions will also change.
Yeah, they go with the times. Back then, they had only muskets.
Yes, and the definition of a militia is not your everyday people. It's the people like the National Guard that are actually enrolled in military service.
Well, then if they had muskets back then, and that times have changed, we shouldn't only just own muskets now.
Wait, what? I'm sorry.
You said back then they only had muskets, right? And since times changed, we have more than just muskets. Because times change, we should be able to have different guns.
Yes, and because times change, the definition would also change because it's a fluid document. And on top of that, we can change amendments. It's been done before. Alcohol was banned for a time.
And even back then, they had rapid-fire guns too. They were working on rapid-fire guns back then, so they knew what would happen. So
yeah, but your everyday people didn't have your Maxim machine guns. They had muskets.
Yeah, but they were working on giving guns like that to the people. That's why they were making better guns and working on rapid-fire guns back then. They knew that
they weren't giving them to. They weren't making them to give them to the
people.
They were making
them to us. They were working on it.
They were working on it for wars and things like that because the war technology was changing very much at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving more away from horses and swords.
But the fact is, they still knew that guns were going to be heavily improved through the years. That's why I think it's so vague, because they knew that guns would improve,
Yeah. I mean, still, if the guns of the Second Amendment are fluid, then you have to have the definition being fluid, because, if we're going First Amendment, free speech. Now, free speech is all of social media because it's a fluid thing. It doesn't just stay constant with the times, so you have to move along with the definitions too.
Okay. So are you keeping like certain guns or banning other guns, or what are your thoughts on that?
In general, I think like AK-47 should be completely banned, like bump stocks, all those sort of things. But I think mainly because I live in a generally rural area. Hunting is a very big thing in this area. I've shot handguns myself. So I think, handguns, I think you should be allowed to have that. A hunting shotgun and a hunting rifle. I think besides that, you really don't need anything else. I think you should have 3 guns. And I don't like any of the self-protection. That's not a real, I don't really consider that a real argument, seeing as you're 66% more likely to turn that gun on yourself than you are to actually use it defending yourself. Yeah.
So if most gun deaths are by suicide, then not many people are murdered a year by guns then. So what exactly is like the huge, you can't really, I don't know. Like 60% of suicide or deaths by guns are suicides.
It's about 34. I think this last year was 38,000 people were killed by guns,
Yeah,
meaning
and
about 24,000 of those were suicides. So about 12 to
yeah,
14,000 of them in that ballpark range
and
were
banning guns wouldn't prevent
killing.
suicides either. You know.
Well, the thing about that is guns have a 96% effectivity in suicides,
Mhm.
while jumping only has a 34%. And
It's true,
drug overdoses only have an 8%
mhm.
chance. So it's a much
but
lower chance of people
but
actually being successful with it.
but if people can't get guns, they're still suicidal. They will find a way to commit suicide.
Yes, but
So
again, it's a very the with whenever you go from a gun to jumping off a building or say like that's you go from a 96% chance of
mhm.
success to a 34% chance.
So then
And
they'll try again.
well, at that point, you would attempt to try and get them either mental help or
Mhm.
psychiatric help. That's how you say it, or something along those lines. So you can try and
Okay.
rehabilitate those people so that they don't want to do that.
Because I'll say I'm suicidal. I have suicidal friends. I guarantee
Mm-hmm.
you, any of us, if we couldn't get a gun, we would do it some or try it some other way. You know, it because I've been around suicidal people, and we will find a way to do it. We have to without a gun. You know, it's rough. It's really rough, but yeah.
Yeah, and again, we should make it harder to do it the first time, so that
I'm for background checks, but I don't agree with like banning AK-47 down like red
well,
flag laws.
why do you need an AK-47 though?
If I want one, what if someone has? What if someone comes into my house and they have an AK-40 and they say they got a AK-47 illegally, and I only have a handgun. What am I gonna do?
I mean,
Because if we ban guns, the black market will
I mean,
rise.
the theoretical idea that someone would rob your house with a handgun is kind of ridiculous, seeing as most crimes do happen
Mhm.
with a handgun
Yeah,
and
they
not
do.
an AK-40. Someone breaking into your AK house with an AK-47,
It'd be a little crazy.
that would be that'd be a sight to
Mhm.
see. But if
But why shouldn't
and
somebody
again going by that, if we're going to look at the Bureau of Justice, they did again a study on criminals and self-defense. 6.7% of all burglaries had a gun involved, so not that many.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
out of those 6.7%, only 3.2% actually had to use that gun as the criminals. So
Okay.
the odds that they would come into your house with a gun is very low in the first place. And then on top of that, them using it is an even lower chance. So self-protection isn't, I don't find that as a viable answer.
But more lives are saved a year by defense and self-defense than killed by guns.
I'm
But
sorry, what did you say?
but more lives are saved by guns. What if people got guns illegally? People like
But
me doesn't have a gun. What are we gonna do to defend ourselves if someone tries to hurt me?
if we make guns illegal, then theoretically no one would have a gun. And even if they do get it, again, that's very expensive. And the even idea of that someone would spend $34,000 just so they could rob your house for a TV is
I
kind of
mean,
ridiculous, in my
drugs,
opinion.
heroin's illegal. People get that still legally. Same with most drugs are illegal, and people still find a way to get them. And even then, 8 out of 10 offenders using guns, you know, but in defense for serving time, half of them they use a gun in the crime, and about 34% didn't buy one. They just got it. They stole it from a friend or a family member. Thirty
Mm-hmm.
percent got from 30% of people who got
Yeah,
offended
not
who
that
were
many people buy it. It's like under 1% that commit a crime actually buy the gun.
it's more like
Which,
30. Well, no, 34% got it from a family or friend.
yeah,
30% got it from the black market.
but like going to like a retail area, like a regular, like Walmart or one of those. It's like under. Are you looking at the Bureau of Justice or something like that? Because I think in there it says it's like under like 3% or something like that. So it's very low. I will say that.
Mine says they got a gun from a drug dealer black market source, 30.4%.
again, then we would reinvest money into the police so they could crack down on that stuff. The black market,
I don't trust the police at all. They are inherently evil and wrong. I don't trust the government and police to defend me. Look at the world right now. The police are not on our side. You want only them to have guns and not us to defend ourselves?
I mean, if we were theoretically to take away the guns from the people, I would also, I mean, this is just me, but I don't think they would actually do this. I would demilitarize the police because they're very militarized at the moment.
Yeah, they definitely are.
But again, my problem is it enables people to do it. And a lot of gun owners are very irresponsible, seeing that, again, the Bureau of Justice, 56% of all criminals that used a gun in their crime stole it. So clearly, gun owners aren't the most responsible people with their guns. And on top of that, a study done by, where am I? Children's Hospital Philadelphia, more than 75% of first and second graders know where their parents keep their guns.
Mm-hmm.
That is ridiculous.
But there's stats that they're more likely to be killed by a car accident than kids are than to grab their gun and kill themselves with it.
In 2015, 2,824 kids were killed by guns. That's way too high, and 13,700 were injured.
And some of those stats,
and 89% of children gun deaths were accidental shootings. I mean, they're very
a lot of the stats,
irresponsible.
Yeah, all the stats about kids even says kids up to 23. 23 is not a kid. Some of those stats include people who are like my age.
No, it's 18. It stops at 18 for the children of Philadelphia.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, they specified that. It does stop. They cut off there.
Okay, gotcha.
And then whenever people bring up domestic violence, again, Children's Hospital Philadelphia, gun violence is more likely to turn violent with a gun in the home, and abusive partners' access to firearm increases the risk of homicide by 8 times if there's a firearm in the house. If there wasn't a firearm, that risk goes down 8 times. That's
of course, but like, majority of gun owners aren't gonna kill their friends or spouse or wife or anything like that.
Well, in domestic violence cases, the chance of it happening goes up by 8. It goes up 8 times.
Well, how many people die of that? How many people are killed by a gun by their abusive partners a year?
Let me find.
And even then, why don't we just give those people better mental health? You know, have better mental health put in instead of taking away people's guns.
Actually, if all of mental health were cured in America overnight, the gun death or the gun violence would go down like 4%.
Yeah, so how we working on
nothing.
mental?
Yeah.
Why don't work on mental health instead of just saying, "Oh, you don't care about your health? Give me your guns." That's not gonna help anybody. No.
Wait, what? Sorry.
Why don't we work better on having mental health for people instead of just taking away their guns?
Again, mental health. If every single mental health illness was cured overnight, gun violence would drop by only 4%.
Only 4%? I thought said 4 times, 4%.
No,
okay.
It only will drop 4%. No, it's not. It's a minuscule amount. Most gun violence is done by everyday regular people.
But
typically.
I can argue that people who are mentally good will not kill anybody. If anybody has perfect mental health.
Well, this stat completely disagrees with you because it says it will only drop by 4%, meaning that other 96% is people who don't have mental illnesses.
If you have mental illness, you're not going to go out and kill somebody. Just saying.
Yes, which is why it would only drop by 4%.
Okay.
So it's not a mental illness issue. It's everyday regular people that are going out and doing this.
What do you? People who go out and commit mass shootings are not mentally well. None of them are. 0% of people who commit mass shootings are mentally well. You can't just say, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna go shoot up a school today." That's not a normal thought to have. That's not a healthy thought to have. You know. No one in their right mind who is mentally well and who has perfect mental health will think that shooting someone innocent is a good idea to do.
Well, 96% of gun violence is done by regular people who don't have mental illnesses. So
Well,
again,
what do you
that's
mean you have mental illnesses? So let's say,
as in they
what
don't
do you
have
mean?
mental. But they don't have mental illnesses, as in they're
How,
mentally. They haven't been diagnosed by anything. They don't.
just
That's
because
what.
you're not diagnosed doesn't mean you're not mentally ill. Are you saying that a school shooter shoots up a school, he wasn't diagnosed? Do you think he's mentally well, not mentally, and he's not mentally ill?
What'd you say?
Let's say someone shoots up a school. Do you think that they're either they're not diagnosed? Do you think they're not mentally ill for doing that?
Well, mass shootings account for a very small amount of deaths, so 4%
I don't,
sounds likely.
I'm just giving an example. Well, any murder.
Well,
Do you think
yeah,
someone who commits murder is mentally ill? Not mentally, all of them are not mentally ill.
no, because the stat completely disagrees with that opinion.
So you're
Again,
saying that
4%.
let's say someone commits a murder, they're not diagnosed. You're saying they're mentally well.
I mean,
I don't see how someone who commits a murder cannot be seen as not mentally ill. Doesn't make sense to me.
well, if
You know?
you're mentally ill, you can qualify for, I can't remember what it's called, but you can be declared mentally insane and you would get out of it. But that doesn't happen that often. So that,
Yeah. No, I'm saying the sources say that people who are not mentally ill go to murder people, right?
or well, that's fact checker. The question was for fact checker. The question was: do people with serious mental health disorders pose a greater risk of becoming mass shooters? And the answer is people with mental health illnesses are somewhat more likely to become violent. Those without, but a majority are never violent, and very little is known specifically about mass murder and their psychiatric state.
Okay.
So they're not. It's
yeah, but if someone, any human who's out in truth innocent person, they are mentally ill. Anybody, anyone who goes in truth innocent person is mentally ill.
that's not accurate at all.
So, I think it's a normal, healthy thought to think about murdering somebody.
So are you saying that all of our soldiers that go out across seas are mentally ill?
If they're shooting innocent people, yes, absolutely.
Well, innocence is a point of view. It doesn't. War. We're going over to a war for oil. Necessarily, what did they do? Our government doesn't actually post wars for.
I don't like the military. They're all. I don't like them at all.
So
We're not talking about the military. We're talking about people here in America. Someone say
military people are everyday people. They were everyday people before. They're not. It's not like you just lose all your human inhibitions.
Yeah. I'm saying you can have mental illness without being diagnosed. Someone who shoots another human being, there's something wrong with them mentally. Because they're not diagnosed doesn't mean that they're not mentally ill. You know?
Well, now you're saying that anyone who does. Well, what you just said is that anyone that shoots another human being has a mental illness.
They're innocent, yes. If you shoot someone innocent, you have mental illness, 100%. It's not a normal. It's not a normal thought to think to want to go and shoot somebody, to really want to do it. That's not a normal, healthy, regular thought at all.
I mean, it's not necessarily a normal thought, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily mentally ill.
Oh,
it just means that you could have poor judgment.
Yeah, that means you have nothing mentally wrong with you. Those are your thoughts in your head that you are thinking because your mental state. There's definitely something wrong with that there.
Not necessarily. Again, it could just be. I mean, if we're going to go in. Is it technically, just the act of taking an innocent life? Is that what you're getting at? That causes, that gives a sign of a mental illness? The taking of an innocent life?
Not just that, but if you do take an innocent life, something's mentally wrong with you, 100%. If you think about it, go follow through with it. There's something mentally wrong with you.
Well, then anyone that does hunting is therefore mentally ill because they're taking an innocent life.
A human life. because other people hunt for food. You know, I'm not gonna kill a human for food. You know, hunters do it for food. You know, to survive sometimes.
Again, it just because you go out and shoot someone does not mean you have a mental illness.
I don't understand that thought. I'm sorry. I really disagree with that. Absolutely. I don't know. But how is it not? How is it not mentally ill to show that?
I'm sorry, hold on, I'm just looking at something very quickly.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to find something very quickly.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Okay, so a study, who is this? mentalillnesspolicy.org determined that only 1,000 homicides a year are done by those who are actually mentally ill. Meaning, if we take out the 66% of suicides, and we're left with the 12,000, only 1,000 of those are actually done by mentally ill people. Meaning, there's still 11,000 people that are mentally sound that are doing this.
No one mentally sound kills somebody though. So
People
are you saying
do
that,
it all the time in the military? They
yes,
very much do.
And they are very mentally ill.
In the what?
I don't like the military. I'm not a huge fan of them.
I'm sorry, but did you just say that just because you're in the military and you shoot someone, you're mentally ill? Because that's what well, according to you, because they're taking an innocent life.
Very few instances where it's been like justified, especially nowadays. We're killing innocent people overseas for oil. That's mentally ill right there. That's so what?
And again, it's 4.3% of all murders are done by mentally ill people. So it's not the mental illness. It just that doesn't go across well. It very much disputed by every fact that I can find. Is there like a fact that you can show me that says that people who shoot other people have a mental illness?
I can find one, I'm sure. Because I thought it was just common knowledge, but
well, facts are disagreeing with it, so then it's not common knowledge. It's fake. It's not an actual.
Murderous thoughts come from personality disorders, which is mental illness. And their personality disorders are all mostly mental illness.
Yeah, personality disorders, DID, that's a mental illness. That's under the qualification of a mental illness. That means that is also included in this. It's, things like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, all cognitive, something like that. But again, there's no evidence to support that mentally ill people are people who just go out and shoot people are mentally ill. It's 4% decrease.
I disagree with that, but we've been here. We're on this point a long time. Let's move to something else. How would you actually work on taking banning certain guns, taking guns from people that have guns that you want to make illegal? How would you go about doing that?
How would I go about stopping people from getting more guns?
Yes, and maybe taking guns from people who have guns currently that you don't want.
Well, I would not want to take guns. I would I would do a voluntary buyback with maybe like a tax break and a sort of cash incentive, something like that, is what I would do if I wanted to take guns back, because forcefully is probably one of the stupidest ideas anyone could have. You're never going to forcefully take guns from Americans. But again, I would start out by background checks, and from there I would institute, AK-47s, bump stocks, anything that can make large magazines, things like that. Any gun that necessarily has a high capacity of rounds, I would essentially get rid of first. So you would still be able to have things like handguns where it's only 8 in a magazine.
High capacity doesn't make much of a difference, though. Honestly, you
High
can unload
capacity
30
makes a
rounds.
very much difference. If you have an AK-47 versus a handgun, AK-47 has 32 to 36
Well, of course,
bullets
like
in it.
37, yeah, but some,
Well,
rifles-
if I have a row of people in front of me and I have an AK-47, if I have a handgun, 32 bullets are coming out in
uh-huh.
seconds versus 8 bullets in seconds.
In that
There's
case, yeah, but
a huge amount of difference. You're doing a massive difference. Even a shotgun, because shotguns, even though it's only 2 bullets, it's a spread shot. It's not just one shot. So you're going to injure, depending on how close, or kill people at a much wider range.
But there are some guns that have high capacity that you can reload a handgun and shoot the same amount of time. Unload a handgun really fast and still fire the same amount of bullets the same amount of time as some rifles with higher capacity magazines. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wait, what? It doesn't take.
There's some rifles you can unload 30 rounds, and they're handguns. Say you have a 10 magazine handgun, you can reload it.
Again, I would ban those. It's as simple as that. You would ban it.
You have handguns too, because you can reload just as fast as you can keep on shooting.
You can reload, but you're reloading just as fast with an AK-47 with something with a larger magazine. So if you're going, say, a handgun, it takes you, I don't know, maybe 3 seconds. Let's say, I don't know how long it takes to unload an entire magazine of a handgun. Say 3 seconds. Say it takes you a second or two to reload. That's 4 to 5 seconds. AK-47, I'm not sure how fast the bullets come out. Let me look that up, actually.
The handgun you can reload in like 1 second, and then you can fire just as fast.
If it's automatic, you could, but again, automatic would be banned.
Boom, boom, drop, clip, drop, reload, drop, reload. It's that fast.
Hold on, I'm finding how fast or how much can AK-47. AK-47 is 10 rounds per second, or 600 rounds a minute. Okay. And if we look at a handgun, how many? Where? And where handguns can fire, says 30 to 60 rounds a minute.
A minute? You can unload.
Which is a very slow amount.
You can unload a handgun in like 5 seconds.
Okay, 5 seconds.
And
five. What's 5 divided by 60? I'm sorry, math.
10. AK-47, of course, is faster, but there are other rifles
12.
out there.
What's 8 times 12? 12. 100. You're about at 100. So even if you're going at 5 seconds, that's only 100 bullets. Where again, an AK-47 is 600. Those are two very different numbers.
AK is faster.
That is 6 times. So yes, you would ban something that's automatic and has a higher capacity. If there are other higher rounds in it.
Just because higher capacity doesn't mean it shoots faster. There are high capacity rifles that you can shoot 30 rounds and unload and reload a handgun 3 times just as fast.
Yeah, I guess so. High capacity and high rate of fire. Handguns are generally a slower rate of fire. They're not necessarily a fast gun that is meant to do, a lot of rounds in a short amount of time. They're not built for that sort of thing.
But with the rifles that are, I don't.
Rifle, I don't know. I've only shot a few rifles, so I'm not 100% sure about what rifles are
Now, do you
doing.
think that gun control laws are racist? I think that they are to some degree.
Gun control laws?
Oh, absolutely.
Racist? Do it.
Oh, absolutely. Some gun control laws are absolutely racist.
I mean, seeing as a white U.S. citizen is twice as likely to own a gun than an African American citizen, not necessarily. But
Black people are arrested just as many times for owning a gun than white people are.
what?
Why are black people arrested just as many times as white people are for owning a gun? Almost the same exact number. It's almost the same number. Why are black people arrested for owning a gun? Seems like white people. If white people own more guns, black people own guns, and they only and black people
If
only
we're going to look at, you can look at population density for that. If you're going to look at typically where you see a lot of gun crimes occur is in the city, where most African American citizens live is in the city. So if you're going to do, correlation, if there's a higher amount of gun violence in a city and there's a higher density of African American citizens in a city, then you're generally going to see a higher rate of African American citizens being incarcerated for gun use. Whereas, white citizens, there's not as many that are living. There's still a lot that are living in the city, but compared, I think to ratio, it's not as much. White people live in a much more, suburban, I think, suburban, rural, whichever one it is, countryside. So you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's not as much of a police force.
Yeah, not
Like
just not just black people too. It's Hispanics too. Hispanic offenders. There's a next largest group for guns at almost 30%. Why is that? Why is it all people of color getting arrested the most for owning guns? Even some of the first gun laws ever were saying, "Hey, if you're black, you can't have a gun." Even in like the '60s, when the Black Panther Party, they had guns and they were having a protest. They passed gun laws just because of them, just because of Black Panthers. A lot of gun control policies that we have in place are because of racism.
I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up a. Yeah, again, it's the population density. Albuquerque, New Mexico, if we're going to look at that, their population density of Hispanic citizens is 50%. And cities, again, have much higher rate of gun violence. So if you have over 50% being Hispanic, then you're going to have a lot of those gun violence crimes being Hispanic. There's just a greater chance of it. It's population density. It's not necessarily a race. I mean, there are definitely there are definitely some racist laws out there, but I don't necessarily think that you can say all people of color that are in jail are in there because the laws are racist. It's just population density whenever you come down to it.
It's harder for people of color to get guns too. Why is that?
Do you have a stat for that? Is it
somewhere poopy? Uh-oh. Oh, stinky. I mean, yeah, if black neighborhoods, people in neighborhoods are over policed, and they get arrested for doing nothing. And even if you have a little thing on your background check, you can't get a gun.
Well, they're not necessarily over policed again. That if you,
they definitely
I mean, there's some places are, but again, if you look at it, it's strictly density. If you have a more densely populated area, you're going to have more cops in that area. Like where I live, there's no cop, there's no cities. I have state troopers in this area. So we aren't seeing a lot of people getting arrested. But if you go down to the city where I live, you have the state police. There's a separate borough that we have there, and then there's the city itself, and then we have multiple college campuses, police departments. Schools have their own polices in them, There's just a larger density of cops in the area because you have more people there, so you're going to need more cops in that area. It's not necessarily just because of
Can
color.
you give me a stat that shows that black neighborhoods aren't over policed? Or because neighborhoods are policed? But why is that the case though? Why is every overdense population having people of color then?
What?
So black neighbor, I say people of color are over policed, but you say it's because of density. Then why is all the high density neighborhoods people of color then?
Because they just because they chose to live there.
No, they didn't choose to live there. Those are
You can buy a house. You can very much buy a house anywhere.
neighborhoods were divided into sections where it made some affordable and not so affordable, and because this country is horrible, a lot of black people
Are we talking about immigrants right now?
No.
Is that what you just said?
Segregation too. People make neighborhoods. They segregate it. They divide the neighborhoods into certain sections. So white people can be able to afford this one more, and people of color they should live in this one more often. You know, that's what they do. They divide neighborhoods into that kind of way.
I suppose, but I mean,
why are they all people of color though? They have to be over policed. It doesn't make any sense because the over density.
it's a city. There's going to be a high. I don't know how to like phrase it anyway. It's just a city. There's a higher rate of people living there.
Why are white neighborhoods over policed then?
Because most white neighborhoods are in redneck country areas. There's a lot more white people living in those areas than there are in cities.
I mean, the rednecks own a lot of guns, right, and stuff like that.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
You said they all live in redneck neighborhoods.
Not necessarily redneck. They just live in rural areas.
Okay, I got you. Okay, yeah.
Is that? I don't know if I'm even using the right word. Rural, is that the right rural, suburban? I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to be using. I'm very confused between these two. Rural. Okay, yeah. Rural is countryside. Rural areas. Not redneck. I mean, just rural areas.
Why should people of color have to live in over density neighborhood? Why do they have to live there? Why are most living there? Probably because they don't have the choice, right?
I mean, in rural areas, there's houses come with a lot more property, so they take up more space. So there's not as much housing opportunities out there, and because they come with more space and bigger houses, typically, they're more expensive, I guess. But that doesn't have really anything to do with it. There's just less space out in the rural countryside. So there's, cities are huge. They have millions of people in them.
Yes, I don't think the people of color neighborhood should be over policed. And have their guns taken away because
they're not necessarily over policed. It's adjusted to the population density. Like where I live, the population density is very low, so we don't have a lot of police. State police, that's it. But if you go down to the city where there's 100,000 people and they're all living, in a smaller area, you're having a lot more cities because there's a lot more people, meaning there's a lot bigger chance you're going to get violence.
All right. I think we've reached about the 45-minute mark. If you have any we're going to close it out. Any closing statements, you can just give them right now.
I mean, gun violence, the reason I don't like it, and I think we should have gun control, is because it puts a very big risk to our younger people, necessarily, basically, because, again, 89% of children gun deaths are accidental shootings, and 75% of first and second graders know where their parents keep their guns. And if you look at it, the ratio of children killed by guns to cancer is 2 to 1. So for every one child killed of cancer, there's 2 killed by guns, which should not happen. And then on top of it, states with stricter gun law controls witness fewer gun-related deaths. Even though they may have more mass shootings, their there's less actual gun deaths. So the numbers, whenever you go into states with stricter gun controls of gun deaths, it does go down. So, yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
All right. I believe, actually, I believe that guns have saved people more than taken away, and that even if you take guns away, people will get guns. They'll find a way to murder and find guns no matter what they do. And that it's just all right to have guns, you know. And that it's mostly mental health issue more than a gun issue. And we need to help people with their mental health more often and make it more make healthcare seem more normal to people, because a lot of people see it as a sign of weakness and it's not, you know. So work on healthcare more often than gun control. And now we shall do Q&As, questions and answers for us. All right, guys, let me ask us your questions. Boom, 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 boom. Come on.
Wait, can I
Come
see
on,
your
y'all.
chat?
Give us some questions, y'all.
Y'all need to ask questions right now. I swear to God. Aaliyah, I see you're in here. You better start asking questions.
Okay, do you know what redlining is?
Redlining? I am afraid I do not know that term. Redline. Let me look it up. Well, I don't think that's the right context. Drive with a car engine at its above maximum RPM. I don't think that's right.
That ain't it. That ain't it.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. Discriminatory police practice, which banks, insurance companies refuse or limit loans, mortgages, insurance.
It's most. I'd say it's most like segregation that affects both black and white communities, because they.
Again, I mean, I don't necessarily think because you're a person of color, you're going to necessarily get, a lower. I mean, there maybe if you get a racist banker or something like that,
color too. It's
low income areas is the thing, right?
Yeah, by income
if you have,
like that.
The banks are a business. That's so
Banks?
my opinion on that. Banks are technically a business. If you're going by loans or something, which is what this says, right? Is that what this is meaning?
What was that?
That redlining, discriminatory practice, which banks, insurance companies, etc., refuse or limit loans, mortgages, or insurance. Correct? Is that what that is? I have no clue what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying it doesn't exist nowadays? Because shit, hold on. My mouse isn't working. Yeah, it has to do with that. Also, it comes from like neighborhoods where a very sure people be more likely to default on mortgage, and stuff like that. And they use red ink on parts of the map that are seen the high risk of default, as well as more desirable neighborhoods for approving a loan. Now, the riskier neighborhoods happen to be black or Latino. And why is that?
I mean, then necessarily that would be racism. That's most likely one thing, because there are racist people in this world who,
Okay. Yeah.
That's definitely a thing, but that's most likely a big part of it. But another possibility, which it could be a possibility. I think it most likely is the more racism. But I think another possibility that could be is cities typically have lower incomes. Typically, because cities are typically big buildings or big companies, not necessarily, whenever you actually look where bigger houses and more expensive houses are, they're typically in rural areas. And so typically you're going to see in cities, there's people with lower incomes. And because banks and insurance companies are trying to make money, they are going to refuse service to some people, which I think is stupid.
Mm.
Because you should be trying to help people and not strictly in it for a profit.
Yeah, exactly.
But
All right.
I think that is probably a big part of it.
Yeah, was the other question I still wanted to ask? Do you think white privilege is real?
Very much so.
Okay.
I lived in the city, which
Mhm.
is, I looked it up. It's like one of the eighth worst city for people of color, and where I am versus people I was friends with who are people of color, where I am now and where they are two very different people. And some of the people I
Okay.
knew were very smart people, and I respected them, and I thought that they, were going to be there with me, and we were going to, be big and make lots of money. But I am where I am now
Mhm.
because white privilege is a very real thing.
Not a question, but Shelby said, can we agree that debates are for education, not self-berating and calling people dumb names? And I agree. 100%. Debates aren't about calling people names. It's about education and conversation too, trying to learn from each other.
Debates, in my opinion, are about trying to find the common ground in between two ideas and figuring out which idea works the best.
Mm-hmm. All right. And do you think that Stalin is daddy?
Absolutely not. I hate Joseph Stalin with a burning
Oh,
passion.
man.
He is a terrible. He is a war criminal. He killed more people than Adolf Hitler. He is terrible. The Ukrainian famine was caused directly by his policies. He is not. I do not like him whatsoever.
Is that a self-made famine that people just burned their own crops because they were snowflakes?
No, it was Soviet. It was Soviet soldiers that burnt their crops. Stalin said himself that it was a great success.
Okay, gotcha.
I do not like Joseph Stalin.
That's fair. That's fair.
He is not my favorite person at all.
Gotcha. Not any more questions. I think that
cringe,
will
Logan.
I think that will settle it. All right. That was a good debate.
Lance Radia's fiance.
Lance fiance.
Yeah, that was it was very fun.
It was fun. All right. I'm gonna head off, everybody. Y'all have a good day. And yeah, peace out.